Hey guys, Nintendrew here. As you know, I am a video game collector, and some of my favorite things to collect are game console variations, different colors, special editions, that sort of thing. And the Game Boy family of systems in particular has more console variations than you can shake a Deku stick at. So today, I'll be showcasing my entire collection of Game Boy consoles, all the way from the original to the Game Boy Micro. And at the end, I'll take you through a few of my favorite titles for each platform. So, let's get to it. Alright, just before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that the idea for this video comes from you guys. Anytime I post photos of my collection on Twitter or Instagram, I always seem to get questions about when I'm going to give a more in-depth look at my set of Nintendo handhelds. So that's what this video is all about.
Psst! Follow my Twitter and Instagram for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes stuff and sick Nintendo memes. It'll be great, just do it.
Okay, we've got a ton of handhelds to cover in this video, 35 altogether. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through each of the standard releases one by one, and then we'll take a look at some more special edition systems toward the end. So to get started, first up, of course, is the original Game Boy, launched in 1989, and I've got two variations to show here. First up is the original gray version. This is the one you're all probably familiar with. And I've also got this transparent model. This one was part of the Play It Loud series, which came a little after the Game Boy's initial launch. There are actually two different transparent original Game Boy models, one with black text under the screen and one with purple. The one I have here is the one with the purple. The Play It Loud series also had variations in black, yellow, blue, red, and green. I don't have those particular colors myself, but I'd love to add them to my collection soon. Next up in the Game Boy family is the Game Boy Pocket, a smaller, slimmer version of the iconic handheld which came 7 years later in 1996, and I've got 5 of these to show. We've got red, blue, black, silver, and transparent. Now you might be asking, what is my goal when I'm collecting multiple versions of the same system? And usually my answer will be, I like to go for a complete set of standard colors that were available in North America. So in the case of the Game Boy Pocket, I've got 5 of the 7. I'm just missing yellow and green. So we've almost got a complete set of US Game Boy Pocket consoles. And whenever I'm out at local game stores, I'll keep an eye out for those that I'm missing. Next up is the Game Boy Color. And this is one where I actually do have the full set. So we've got berry, grape, kiwi, dandelion, teal, and atomic purple. Every standard color available when the system launched in 1998. And as you might have noticed, aside from atomic purple, which was just a staple of Nintendo's aesthetic in the 90s, each color is represented by one of the letters in the system's logo. So as you can see here, the color of each letter corresponds to one of these launch systems. Pretty cool. After that, 3 years later came the Game Boy Advance. And once again, I've managed to put together the whole set of standard US colors. So we've got indigo, Arctic, black, fuchsia, glacier, and platinum. And here is the whole set together. Next up, of course, is the Game Boy Advance Sp. And I've split these into 2 different categories here, and in a moment I'll explain why. In the first set, we've got Onyx Black, Flame Red, Cobalt Blue, and Platinum. And over here, we've got Pearl Pink, Pearl Blue, and Graphite. So the first 4 systems here were all available at launch when the SP came out in 2003, and featured the new front-lit screen, which finally meant that we didn't need to play Game Boy games in direct sunlight to see what we were doing. But about 2 years later, Nintendo made a hardware revision in the form of these latter 3 systems, which instead included a true backlit display, which helped illuminate the action even better. You might see these referred to online as 101 units. That's because if you check the model number on the back, the original SP's number reads AGS001, whereas the newer version with the backlight has the model number AGS101. So if you're looking to pick up a Game Boy Advance SP and you have the option, you'll definitely want to go for a 101 model. And finally, the last system in the Game Boy family, launched in 2005, is the Game Boy Micro, and I have both the black and silver variations. Of course, if you remember, there were a few different faceplates released for the system, but as far as the base console, these are the only 2 colors that we got at launch in the States. It's really kind of a shame because there were 6 other colors which were launched across Europe, Japan, and Australia, but we never got those stateside, so I might have to branch out and pick up some of those eventually. This is one of my favorite iterations of the Game Boy line. It's got a bright screen with great pixel density, excellent responsive buttons, and a super small form factor. Only downside is, this one is not going to play your original Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. This one is just for Game Boy Advance games. Now, you might have noticed, the only system from the Game Boy family that I don't have represented here is the Game Boy Light. And the reason I don't have one of those yet is because it was a Japanese exclusive, so they're much harder to come by stateside. But eventually, of course, I'm going to have to import one of them just to round off the whole set, so it's on my list. It'll happen. Alright, so now that we've covered all the standard systems, we're going to get to some limited edition consoles. And first up, I've got this guy, the Ice Blue Game Boy Pocket. Compared to the normal Blue Pocket, this one is a bit more subdued and has kind of a sparkle to its plastic. This system was only available at Target stores in North America, or could alternatively be purchased by mail order through Nintendo Power Magazine. Next up, I've got this special edition Game Boy Color system, which was made to celebrate the launch of Pokemon Yellow. At first glance, it looks pretty similar to the Dandelion Game Boy Color, but this one has a two-tone design with the front of the console sporting that bright yellow and the back having a deep blue. And of course, we've got this custom bezel with some classic Pokemon characters, the Pokemon logo down below, and some uniquely colorful face buttons. For the Game Boy Advance, I've got this blue system, which was exclusive to Toys R Us, may they rest in peace, as prominently indicated by the logo on the upper part of the screen's bezel. Otherwise, this one's exactly the same as the rest of the lineup. And finally, for the Game Boy Advance Sp, Nintendo kind of went crazy with the limited edition systems, so I've actually got 4 of these so far. First up is the SP Tribal Edition, which is basically identical to the Platinum console, but with the addition of these tribal tattoo decals on both the inside and outside of the system. Next is this Platinum/Onyx edition, and I've got to be honest, when I first saw this one, I thought it was some sort of a repair job, where someone took parts from the black and silver systems and mashed them together. But nope, this was an official limited dual-color release. After that, I've got this Classic NES Edition SP, which I believe was made alongside the Classic NES series of Game Boy Advance titles, which brought some popular NES titles to the handheld for on-the-go play. And finally, the last Game Boy handheld in my collection is this awesome SpongeBob SquarePants themed system. In addition to its striking design, this one is one of those AGS 101 models with that brighter backlit display. And like the blue GBA we covered earlier, this one was also exclusive to Toys R Us stores in North America. So now that we've covered every console in my Game Boy collection, I'm going to quickly run through a few of my favorite standout titles. And to get started here, this may be an obvious choice, but I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention one of the most iconic adventures on the original Game Boy, which is Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. Absolutely classic RPGs, I certainly don't need to sing their praises. Definitely check those out and pick them up if you haven't already. Next up, after the introduction of Wario in Super Mario Land 2, he got his own first starring role in Wario Land. And don't tell anybody, but to be honest, I prefer this title to either of the first 2 Super Mario Land games, so highly recommended. And finally, for the original Game Boy, I've got Kirby's Pinball Land, which is just a fun little time waster, especially if you like pinball games, you should give this one a go. For the Game Boy Color, I've got 4 titles here. First up, when you think of Zelda on the Game Boy Color, chances are your mind goes straight to Link's Awakening DX. But I think a lot of people tend to overlook Zelda Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. These titles are often overlooked in Zelda's history, but as you would expect, they are solid adventure titles, so definitely check these out if you haven't already. Next up, I've got a title that might surprise some of the Nintendo 64 fans in my audience. If you're a fan of Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day and originally Diddy Kong Racing, you might be surprised to learn that his debut title as a starring role was in Conker's Pocket Tales for the Game Boy Color. This is a top-down adventure game which was meant to be kind of a precursor to Conker's Quest, which of course was eventually reworked into Conker's Bad Fur Day. So it's almost like a glimpse at what Conker could have been had it not gone down the raunchy M-rated path that it did. So all around, a fun title and a unique look into the history of that character. And finally, for the Game Boy Color, I have kind of an odd choice here, but I wanted to highlight Toy Story Racer. As the name would indicate, this is a racing title, but instead of using 2D sprites or any sort of like Mode 7 technique like Super Mario Kart did on the Super Nintendo, this one actually uses pre-rendered 3D frames to display its environment, so it almost looks like you're racing through a full 3D world. It's kind of a neat effect, and it's at least interesting to see how the developers tried to push the boundaries of the hardware. And finally, to round off our list here, I have 4 more titles for the Game Boy Advance. And this might be cheating a little bit here, but some of my favorite titles for the Game Boy Advance are upgraded ports of NES and Super Nintendo games. So I wanted to briefly mention both Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland and Yoshi's Island Super Mario Advance 3. I've mentioned on multiple occasions that Kirby's Adventure is my favorite NES title, and Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland is an excellent upgraded port which has all new graphics and sound and just looks and plays like a dream, so no pun intended. And then we've got Yoshi's Island Super Mario Advance 3, which was actually my introduction to the title. I played it first on Game Boy Advance, and it's pretty much a direct port. There are a few differences, but overall it's basically the same adventure. So if you haven't picked up Yoshi's Island yet on Super Nintendo, this would be a great place to play it as well. Next up, I've got Super Monkey Ball Jr., which was, of course, a handheld version of the classic series from Sega. This is another case where this was my first introduction to the series, so I've definitely got plenty of nostalgia for this one. But it also stands as one of the most graphically impressive Game Boy Advance games with its true polygonal 3D graphics. And finally, the last title I have today is the original WarioWare Mega Microgames for Game Boy Advance. I am a huge fan of the WarioWare series, and the original title is no exception. So if you're collecting for GBA and you don't have this one yet, do yourself a favor and pick this one up. You will not regret it. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this look at my collection of Game Boy family systems. If you did, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share the video with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks again for watching and for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you like this one, here are 2 more videos you might like as well. As always, if you like what I do and would like to help out the channel, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. And otherwise, I hope you'll look forward to the next one. Take care!